Hello and welcome to episode 54 of TBR, the To Be Read podcast, where we talk about the books we love and the topics that interest us. I'm Patrick Stemp, and as always, I have Michael Ronn and Jamie Maltman here with me. How you guys doing?
Great, Patrick. How's it going?
Good. And tonight we have a special guest, Mr. David Wright. How you doing, Dave?
Hello, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So Dave is one of the three hosts of the self-publishing podcast, and also a member of Sterling and Stone. And he's written just a ton of books, too many to list anywhere. But so if you do want to take a minute and maybe just sort of introduce yourself to our viewers, and maybe just a little bit about sort of the kinds of stuff in this case that you like to read.
Okay. I read a ton of nonfiction, but the first stuff I really started reading was probably like Stephen King, Dean Koontz, Clive Barker, and I enjoy all of their stuff immensely. When I started writing, my reading dipped seriously though, because we write a lot, and I wind up by the time I'm done writing and editing all day, like every day, like I don't usually want to deal with fiction anymore. So I'll read something. I'll read nonfiction. I'll read anything and everything. A lot of times stuff that I have to do with something, might be researching or whatever, science sort of books like that. But we tend to write in cross-genre horror, maybe dark fantasy, a little bit of sci-fi. I would say we're probably closest to like 80s, 90s era Dean Koontz as far as topics are concerned.
Cool. I think probably aside from the nonfiction that you guys have written yourselves, I do remember one great recommendation from probably about a year ago that you were reading was Austin Kleon's Steal Like an Artist.
Yes.
Yep. What was the other one?
Show Your Work.
Show Your Work.
Yes.
Right. That was good too.
Yeah, they're both great.
Yeah. So we're going to do our roundtable here and just kind of talk about what we've all been reading sort of recently or over the past week. And we'll start with Jamie.
Woohoo! And that can make Patrick very happy. Because
did you read it?
I did finish The Martian.
Finally.
Patrick, this is like Patrick's book of the year last year, and he is a massive fan and loves Andy Weir. And it was cool. And it was finally when you guys had him on with you, Dave. That's what pushed me over the edge to find, because I was like, wow, that was a lot of fun. And
he was awesome, guys.
With R.C. Bray.
Fun. Yeah.
I'm listening to the audiobook right now, and it's fantastic.
He would do a really good job. It's fun. It was neat because I could imagine him reading it after having seen both of them on the show. So, but again, so The Martian, it is every bit as fantastic as Patrick said it was. I really liked it a lot. The tone is so cool because the guy is such a, like, he just, he's stuck on Mars and he's got to deal with all this horrible, horrible stuff, but he's such a sort of Joker type of guy, and just the personality that comes out in his mission log stuff is great. And then I loved how they did all the things with the other people that, as they're bouncing back and forth to sort of the mission control-y stuff and all the, them going bananas when, they find out that he's still alive and that sort of stuff. So I really enjoyed it a ton. I think I read it in about 4 or 5 days, and the last couple, the nights kept getting longer and longer. I was having trouble sleeping anyway, so sometimes I'd be like, forget. Like I'd try to go to sleep, and I'd say, to hell with it, and I'd read another few chapters and stay up like another whatever. But definitely like that a ton, and I highly recommend it, and will, echo Patrick's glowing recommendation for it. So that was good.
Have you read that, Dave?
I read part of it. I did not get through. I enjoyed it, but it was one of those things where I was reading it, and then we were going to have him on the show, and I was like, well, I'm never going to finish before then, and I got sidetracked. I did love what I read, though, and I liked for a science fiction book that's being billed as hard sci-fi, it wasn't dry at all. The main character's personality really shined through. I mean, the first line was like, "I'm fucked" or something like that. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna like this book.
And that carried the science incredibly, like just all through. Like, Patrick had even recommended. He's like, well, there's gonna be some stuff about potatoes and an awful lot of it early on. And I'm like, but it was fun and interesting. Like I did not have an issue at all. And I don't read hard sci-fi at all. Like, so this is, I give it a glowing recommendation.
And it's funny with this one because it's one of those books that just really captured everyone's imagination. And I know, he's put some posts out where, I mean, somebody who read the book went and was able to figure out the launch date of the original mission, like what year it was based on the planets, just based on the other things in the book.
The geosynchronous orbits of
And then they're like, and then there's like, but that the topography was not exactly like that, or someone was like that, and he's like,
NASA,
okay, I did the best I could. You didn't
NASA posted something.
Right? They're like, you didn't have this available to me at the time that I wrote this, so thanks, but yeah.
You've written a good book when you catch NASA's attention, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like just jacket cover, like Chris Hadfield is like, this is awesome. This really shines through in terms of astronaut stuff, and you're like, that's a pretty glowing recommendation right there. And our buddy Hugh Howey's on the back cover too, saying it's awesome. So yeah. So anyway, that was one. I started into friend of the show Kevin Tumlinson's upcoming evergreen. I just started that last night after I finished The Martian, and in between the two, because I think I hadn't loaded on my Kindle yet. Back when I was looking at some short story stuff there with Michael, like last month, or I guess 6 weeks ago, whatever it was, decided to fall by the wayside a little bit. But I had requested one because you had mentioned Dennis Johnson stuff, Patrick, that you'd been reading, and my library didn't have any, which is kind of odd. But they did have one of his short stories in this Object Lessons, which is from the Paris Review. So it's basically, they went into the archives of the Paris Review over the past whatever, and different editors were each able to pick one story and then bring it forward and talk about why it's so cool for people who are writing short fiction or wanting to get into writing short fiction now. And so I did read the, what was the title of it? It was the car crash one that I think was from the Jesus Son.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's his most famous story, I think.
Okay. So I read that, and I read one by Raymond Carver in there, and I read one by Jorge Luis, I don't know, is it Borges? How do you say it? Borges, yeah. That one was really cool, and I read one by James Salter, which I won't talk as much about. And anyway, but it was neat. Like I was gonna read just one or two and then take it back, and then I read a couple more, and I was like, okay, I don't mind this. So maybe Maya will talk me into reading more of it, but she'd probably even say, like, this isn't the modern day stuff that she'd recommend anyway on the short story side. But there's some neat stuff. So anyway, so that and more Asterix for my son. It was Asterix and the Picts, so I got to use Scottish accents. Anyway, that was my reading for the week.
Okay. Dave, you want to go next? What have you been reading most recently?
I just downloaded this last week. The Dragonbone Chair by Tad Williams, book one of Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. It's one of those fantasy books that is very well known. It actually inspired George R.R. Martin. So I don't remember. I heard of it before. I think a friend of mine had read it, and it's one of those things I forgot about. And then I was just going through Amazon, and I said, I'm going to go ahead and download it. And I just wanted to I was in a mood for like fantasy, so I decided to start reading it. And 2 chapters in, and I'm like, wow! I just like the way he does world building. Because that's one of the things I didn't like about sci-fi. I used to read sci-fi and fantasy back in the 80s when I was a kid, and a lot of the authors that were really well known back then, they would just go on and on and on about stuff that I did not care about. So I just kind of got out of it because it was just too much. It was too dense. But Tad Williams, he paints the world with a very spare brush, but it's so detailed that when you close the book, you're thinking, how did he do that? It's just like it really works, and it ticks all the boxes so far. So I'm actually I'm continuing forward with it, and we'll see. But so far so good. I like it a lot.
Awesome. That's good. It's nice to have something just suck you in like that, hey?
Yeah, and I really wasn't intending to read any fiction right now because I actually have to go back and read our 2 series, White Space, Season 1 and Season 2, because we're going to start on the 3rd season soon, and I need to go back and read that. And I really didn't want to read any other fiction at the moment, but it grabbed me, and I was like, damn! So.
Okay, so I'll go next. And speaking of fantasy, I read the next book in Stephen Brust's Vlad Teltos series, and as I read further and further, this was book. It was the next sort of collection, which was books 4 and 5. And as I read further into the series, I kind of recommend it more and more. Jamie, I've already said that you should check it out. And I don't read fantasy a whole heck of a lot, and this is a world that's just really sucked me in. Great characters, and I'm also not one for the pages and pages and chapters of world building, and this is just the characters got a lot of humor, and so in this one anyway, Vlad is tasked by his demon goddess to leave his native land and go off to a different island to assassinate a king. And meanwhile, he's having problems with his wife back home, and so this is sort of the next 2 books in the series that sort of take this arc to a close, and then I've started the next book in the series, the next collection. And this one looks like it's going to be interesting. It's apparently, I've already mentioned that these books kind of go back and forth in time. They're not, it's one of those ones where people always ask the author, should I read it in publication order or in story order? But this one, book 6, I guess, looks like it's going to take place from the perspective of a different character, looking into Vlad's life. And I won't say why, but very, very much enjoying this series. And the other book that I read was M.R. Carey's The Girl with All the Gifts. And I'm not going to go too much into that because we're going to talk about it a little bit more once we're done our roundtable. So that leaves Michael.
All right. Well, last couple of weeks I kind of fell off the horse. So I was feeling kind of guilty last week because I had such a bad reading week that I went and bought a bunch of books. So,
and didn't read any of them?
I haven't finished any of them yet, but come on, give me some time, right? Give me like 10 years and I'll finish them. But I picked up some pretty cool stuff. I picked up The Martian, which I don't know if I told you that or not, Patrick.
Cool.
I also picked up another book that has been recommended by several people now, but that's The Man That Folded Himself.
Oh, great
by
book.
David Wright. So looking forward to that one.
That one will mess with your mind.
Yeah, they say it's good. It's really short too, which I was kind of surprised. And then I got the I guess it's the best of Cage Baker. Have you guys ever heard of her? She's like fantasy or sci-fi fantasy short story writer. Pretty interesting stuff. She writes these novels. They're called the Company novels, and it's like time traveling vampires. So kind of interesting, but not like paranormal, but more sci-fi fantasy-esque. So I read one of her stories in Clark's World. I believe it was either Clark's World or Lightspeed magazine. I really liked it a lot, so I picked that up. So I'm looking forward to getting into that. But in terms of reading, I finished the Copyright Handbook by Stephen Fishman, and that's the Writer's Guide to Copyright. I read it last year, but I'm trying to make it a point maybe to read this book every year because it's so huge, and there's just a lot of really good information in it. And as a writer, there's just different layers to understanding copyright. So it's funny how you can reread a book and it's like, wow, I didn't read that section last year. This totally would have come in handy like 4 months ago. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that book if you guys haven't read it. And then I read a poetry collection as well called Missing You, Metropolis by Gary Jackson. A friend of mine recommended it to me, and it's a poetry collection with superheroes, which is it's kind of interesting. I guess the poet, he grew up in reading comic books, and he's a comic book enthusiast, and he weaves a lot of his favorite comics into different poems. So you could just be reading one poem about his sister, another poem about Captain America, another poem about Spider-Man, X-Men, and he weaves them into a really interesting narrative that I like a lot. So I wasn't really expecting to like the book as much as I liked it. So that was a recommendation. And then
that sounds like a poetry book for high school boys, right?
I think high school boys would like it. I mean, I think you would have to have read a lot of the Marvel comics to really get the context. I think if you hadn't read Captain America or the Avengers or any of the comics, you probably would have a hard time with it. But the thing is, I grew up reading those comics. I thought it was awesome. So, and then just like you, Patrick, I also started The Girl with All the Gifts. Did not finish it, but got enough of the way to be able to talk through it intelligibly.
It sounds like you read a lot for somebody that didn't.
Yeah, well, I had a bad week last week, so got to catch up.
Okay.
Yeah, I have these patterns where I guess it's feast or famine. I just read a ton of books, and then it's the next week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, it's like nothing. So I try to make up for it, feeling guilty.
For me, it's kind of weather dictates some of how much I read, because right now I'll sit out on the porch till the sun goes down, which this time of year is getting close to like 9:30.
Yeah.
So I'll read a lot more. I will not be reading quite as much come November 10th when Fallout 4 comes out, which I'm sure which I think we were expecting. I think it'll either be November this year or next year, and we got our wish.
I'm going to fake my death at that time. Although I just said it, so now I've kind of ruined that. I got to find somewhere I got to find a fallout shelter, basically, to hide in for a couple months.
How many sick days do you get at Sterling and Stone?
None. I haven't had a day off in forever. I got to talk to my boss.
There you go. So is that your week, Michael?
Yeah, that's it for me.
Okay. So, usually we have sort of a topic of the week, and when we were talking about having Dave on the show, he recommended this book by M.R. Carey, The Girl with All the Gifts, and so we thought we'd spend a little bit of time talking about that, and just books in general. It's always nice to have people on who love to read, and I've gotten some other recommendations through you guys. Again, the book I think I had originally mentioned to you, Dave, was Swan Song, which I know is one of your favorites.
Yes.
But you said it's been years since you read it, and actually it's been a while since I read it as well. But what a fantastic post-apocalyptic nuclear war book. And that's one I think I found from actually watching you guys do the podcast. It was on your bookshelf.
Mm-hmm.
In the background. You've always got interesting stuff going on in the background there. And another book was one that I think you actually bought for Sean for Christmas, if I'm not mistaken, is that S by J.J. Abrams.
Yeah, I haven't read that myself. Yeah, I got that. Yeah.
He actually...
or Ship of Theseus, or...
Yeah, he suggested that one. I haven't read it yet, but man, I got it in the mail. It's just amazing. That's the one with all the postcards and napkins and stuff throughout the book that, that add to the story. It's pretty cool.
Add this to your list of books to read every day by David Levitan.
Cool.
Nice.
We'll do that right now.
The best book ever, and he's got a follow-up book coming out in August, which I'm absolutely thrilled about because I didn't think there would be a follow-up. So, I'm all giddy like a schoolgirl now.
Every Day by David Levitan. I'll have to check that out.
Awesome book. It was on sale for like $1.99 earlier in the week. I tweeted it out. So
Really?
It might still be on sale. I don't know.
On sale, like on
Kindle.
On Kindle. Okay.
Not the print book.
We'll have to check that out. So when did you read The Girl with All the Gifts? I was in the bookstore this weekend and just saw that they had stacks of it like on the table that right there when you walk in the door. So it must be just kind of a hit.
It's been out for over a year, I think. I read it last month, I think. While we were writing Yesterday's Gone, I started it. I actually got on a day schedule for the first time in years, and every night I went to sleep, I decided I'm going to read regular fiction instead of nonfiction. And because a lot of times when I read nonfiction, it doesn't put me to sleep. It just kind of gives me ideas, and then I'll just start writing crap down. And
Same.
All of a sudden, it's 4 hours later. So I started reading that, and it was also keeping me up, unfortunately. But I absolutely loved it. I'd heard about the book like right around the time it came out, and just a lot of praise for it. And it was actually up against, and I didn't know this until a few weeks ago, it was up against our book, Yesterday's Gone, in the paranormal category for the Audio Awards. And
okay.
Nice.
The Girl with All the Gifts won, and I was like, I want to be mad, but I can't be because it was a better book.
And by the way, the David Levitan book is $1.99 still.
Oh, get it.
Yeah, I just grabbed it.
We'll pick that up after the show.
Any listeners watching or viewers watching?
So it doesn't seem to mention here, but Dave, do you happen to know who M.R. Carey really is?
Yes, his name, I think, is Michael Carey. He is a comic book writer, and he's written other books in other like paranormal sort of series as well.
It looks like he's written comic books. See, I thought it was a pseudonym, but it's just that he's written other things.
I think it might be a different publisher sort of thing. I'm not sure, but yeah.
Yeah, I seem to remember something like that. He's got a bunch of other books out under Mike Carey, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So for Jamie, who hasn't read any of it, and for our listeners who may not as well, this is and we might get a little spoilery here. We'll try not to ruin anything major. But
how about do the pitch part of it? Like pitch why we should read the book first, and then you can get into the spoiler part later.
Well, you should read it because Dave said so. That's
Yeah.
what. So this is.
Taste.
You would not expect it, certainly by the cover, and probably even not by the blurb. But the book starts out. There's a little girl, Melanie, who lives in a cell, as in like a
Child
prison.
in Jeopardy sold me on page
Yeah.
1.
Yeah. And the way they describe the book is the army men sort of come into her cell and they force her to sit in a wheelchair. They tie her down and point guns at her the whole time, and they take her into her classroom and she gets her lessons from her teacher. And this is not a spoiler, I think, because if you take, and Dave actually said, try to stay away from the reviews until you've read the book. And I don't know if you said that because of the spoilers or because have there been some sort of negative reviews around it, or were you?
I'm sure there's negative reviews about everything, but screw that. No, because a lot of the reviews go into what the book is about, and we're about to do the same thing. But to me, the thing that really sold me on this book from page 1 is I didn't know what the deal was with the girl, and I wanted to know. And that's part of the whole mystery of the first fourth of the book, or maybe first fifth of the book. What is she, and whether your guess is right, and that's part of the joy of the book, the discovery of that. And I'll let you go ahead and spoil it from here.
Yeah, if anybody's planning on reading the book and doesn't want to know, we hate to see you go, but you can come back and watch the rest
We
of
won't
the show.
spoil the ending, but
yeah. But what it boils down to is this is a post-apocalyptic zombie book, and she doesn't know what she is. He does a really good job of leading you to that discovery.
Yes.
And it starts out with us where we learned that they don't really eat, or when they do, it's like a bowl of grubs.
Mm-hmm. And they're being sprayed in a chemical shower, and you're thinking, right, what the hell is this? Like some kind of a Nazi war camp or something? But it's not.
No, and then something happens in the classroom that I think is probably the moment where it kind of clicks in when Sergeant I think Parks?
Yes.
Everybody in all of the sort of normal people wear an E blocker, which is something that I don't know what it stands for.
It blocks their scent and hormones and stuff.
So they put it, armpits and stuff but he rubs it off his arm, and one of the kids kind of goes crazy trying to eat him. But this is definitely one of those books where you could say it's not about the zombies.
Right.
It's about this little girl and mostly her relationship with her teacher, Miss Justineau, and the adventure that they kind of go off and have. There's only 5 characters in this book, really. Mm-hmm. There's the little girl, Melanie, her teacher, who she's got a big crush on, basically, and Parks, who's one of the army. So he's kind of the leader of this little area of the army.
He's in charge, yeah.
Yep. Gallagher, who's sort of his, not really second in command, but he becomes such when they have to leave and go off. And Dr. Caldwell.
He's like a naive, young, 19-year-old or whatever kid.
Yeah, he doesn't know what the heck is going on, and he idolizes Parks. And Dr. Caldwell, who wants to slice and dice all the kids so that she can figure out, just find a cure, basically.
And I love her character. Dr. Caldwell. She's. I mean, you could take two people kind of as bad guys in the beginning. Parks comes off as bad because he's in charge and he will kill Melanie if anything goes wrong. And then there's Caldwell who wants to slice the girl open, and they make her so perfect. She's a perfect villain in a way because her goal isn't really a bad one, and you're basically you want this little girl to survive, but at the same time, humanity's hope might lie in this woman killing her. And you basically there are two forces that are going to butt heads at some point in the book, and you feel it coming, and it's just like it's like a tragedy you don't want to see happen, but you can't look away.
Well, I was gonna use that word too. Those are the best kinds of villains, I think, where you could, or he could, kind of like they're doing with 50 Shades of Grey, writing the story from the other character's point of view. Like you could very easily, I think, tell this story from Dr. Caldwell's point of view, and Melanie and Miss Justino would become the villains. Miss Justino would be the evil teacher that's trying to keep Dr. Caldwell from discovering this cure. It would be a totally different story, but it would work because Caldwell's, her goals are well-meaning. She's not an evil person.
Right.
What do you guys think about these stories that we have these days where they just refuse to use the word zombies? So in this book they're called Hungries.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. Did you guys
I loved it.
You like that?
Yeah, I liked it. Well, you first hear it through the kid, so you think it's like her word used for these things. So it makes sense. A kid would think of them as hungries. I mean, that's a child sort of word, and it stuck for me. So.
And then I think you find out that really it is what everybody calls them.
You're right.
I would say that's interesting because that would mean, he's really focused on telling this story right, not marketing it as a zombie thing to try and cash in on any craze, right? Like that's
and again,
that's really cool.
Even from the cover, and actually, when I was reading the book, one of the moments that I had was realizing what this is on the cover, and Dave will probably know the moment. Do you remember the moment that the cover that is represented on here?
The girl, like Pandora's box.
I think it's and this isn't really a big spoiler or anything, it's just interesting, where on their travels they come to a house that...
yeah, okay. Yes.
Should I say it, or is that let people
Sure, it's not really spoiling anything.
One of the things that the government and the army tried to do during sort of the outbreak was they just wiped out huge swaths of land with just chemical fire, and they come across this house, and burned into the side of the house is this image of, I think, both a mother and this little girl, and the girl's got her arms up, and sort of just the image of her kind of burnt into the side of the house, which is really interesting that they could pull that out. It's just a nice touch.
I didn't realize that was the cover. Cause, I got the ebook version and I saw it small, and I thought, the girl with all the gifts, Pandora's box, that they use a lot in the story. So
yeah, that's something the author, and not too surprising, I think, for somebody who's so deep in the comic book world. He knows his mythology. There's a lot of that throughout this, because a lot of the things that the kids are learning in school are they don't have a lot of books after everything that's gone on, so they read a lot of Greek mythology, and she's really stuck on the story of Pandora's box herself, and there's some sciencey stuff in there too that's interesting. He seems like he did quite a bit of research for this book.
Oh yeah, and interestingly, the origin of the zombie is a virus that that we've wanted to use in our own sort of zombie book. So now that he's done it, I'm like, I don't know if I want to do it now, but I do like that he used that particular virus.
Now, I had to type this out so I wouldn't have to look it up in the book, and that Ophiocordyceps.
Yes.
Is that a real thing?
Yes, it is.
Oh, cool.
I'd read about it a few years ago. Yeah, it's quite interesting. So
Now, is that the same fungus that was in The Last of Us, the video game?
yeah, actually, I think it is.
I think it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
it sounds familiar.
So it's based on the idea of one of these parasitic, um, creatures. Like we've probably all seen the videos on YouTube and that, where the fungus gets into the brain of the ant and forces the ant to climb up onto the leaf and then explodes. And actually, that's the example I think he uses in the book. Pretty terrifying stuff, like those wasps that implant their eggs into the bodies of ants and stuff. So that's the scariest stuff, I guess, that's based on nature.
Yeah.
Could really happen, and hopefully one day, maybe.
I suspect it's already happened.
Oh, yeah? To anyone in particular? Or?
No, I just go off on a tangent.
Put the tinfoil hat on. And,
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was going to comment on the zombies without being zombie thing. I actually like that too. I thought that it seems like a lot of books these days are doing that, right? Where it's not really about the zombies, it's more about the character arc. So, like, you can even just see it in movies, a lot of movies that are coming out. Like, what's that Arnold Schwarzenegger movie that just came out where the girl was... Yeah, well, his daughter's turning into a zombie, but...
Is it Maggie or something
Maggie,
like that?
yeah. Where they,
Anybody here see that?
I haven't
seen it, no.
I haven't heard good things about it. But...
I haven't either, and I'll still rent it. It's on pay-per-view on TV and stuff. So
I mean, they say it's one of Schwarzenegger's better movies, but they say the movie wasn't that good. So I don't know where you go with that.
Think of that what you will.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I mean, I think that zombie fiction it's a lot of people say it's overdone, and tons of people are doing it, but I think it's kind of coming around a corner. Like, I think there's some interesting things that authors are doing with it.
Well, it's like The Walking Dead, and I mean, if the story is about, like I said, it's not about the zombies. Like, you can take the story and kind of put it in whatever setting you want. I mean, you could take these characters and stick them in an alien invasion, or in a historical fiction during whatever time period you want to talk about, and maybe they're in an insane asylum. I don't know. I mean, you could, but it's because it's not about the zombies. It's about these characters and the relationships and the journey that they share. And I will say I did like the zombies in this book. The fast-moving. So they're a little different than I think we've seen in like The Walking Dead and that. Well, The Walking Dead's done a little bit of this, where the zombies seem to have kind of two states. They're either just standing around doing nothing, and then from 0 to 100, like if they hear a sound or if they see something, they just lock in and go. And then it's like the zombies in, what was that, 28 Days Later, I think? Those kind of terrifying...
Yeah, these are scarier than the Walking Dead zombies by far, because Walking Dead zombies, they get easily distracted and stupid. These zombies, and they almost use like a sonar sort of thing, like the way I envision it anyway. They're standing, like one of the scenes, they have them walking through like a town of zombies, like trying not to make any noise, and they did that in The Last of Us too.
Yeah.
But I love the idea of that, just walking among them, like trying not to make any noise, and then something startles somebody, and then you just have these things that go after you. And the thing about these zombies particularly is that they are super fast. Some of them can think, which is an interesting wrinkle, and when they lock onto you, they don't ever give up. Like if they chase you into a house, they will stay there forever unless something destroys them or distracts them, because once they stop looking for you, they basically shut down and they're on autopilot waiting, and they're not going anywhere. And that to me is scary as hell for the characters.
Yeah, there is, and man, there's so much more to the book too, about as far as especially around Melanie. How is it that she is who she is and can think and talk and walk, and the relationship with her and Miss Justineau is really interesting, but it's also interesting to see how the relationship evolves with Parks,
Yes.
who will do anything to stop her from kind of losing her losing her cool, doesn't trust her, doesn't like her, but comes to sort of appreciate having her around, I guess. And
I would say he cares for her at the end.
yeah,
And that was a very sweet story. That whole thing, like I really liked how it came together. It was done perfectly.
yes, it's an excellent story, and there is a lot more to it than what we've talked about. Subtle things that we don't want to ruin.
Yeah, there's a lot of mysteries that we've not even touched on, and I think those are best left to find out for yourself, and very rewarding all around.
Yeah,
so what you guys are both saying is that it is deserving of being an Arthur C. Clarke Award nominee for Best Novel for 2015 and a James Herbert Award nominee for 2015 as well.
Is it both of
It
those?
is. That's pretty. I just saw that on the Goodreads page. So.
It deserves any awards it gets. It was the best book I read last year.
well, the other thing that kind of would have sold me on this too was the little Joss Whedon quote on the on the front. If Joss likes it, then it's probably good. So Michael, were you reading it or listening to the audiobook?
I was reading it. I didn't end up getting the audiobook.
And you haven't listened to the audiobook, Dave? You read it?
I only read it, yes.
Okay. But I'd be curious to give it a listen, knowing that it won the Audie.
Yeah.
But I'm so far behind on my once I get sort of through the podcasts, it's hard to get to the actual ebooks. I've still got that 100 Days in Deadland sitting there working through The Martian. But I don't know, once my credits refresh, this might be one that's worth checking out.
Yeah, I don't really do audiobooks. I don't know, I just never got really into them. We have some books out, and from what I heard, they're really good, but I just never really appreciate it. That might be because, I don't have, I don't have to go in the car and
right.
If I did
commute
that,
is steps, not
kilometers
or miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if I'm at my computer, I'm working. I'm not listening to something that's going to distract me, and so.
Yeah, it's hard.
I'm with you there.
Yeah, and if you don't have an Audible plan, audiobooks will put you in the poorhouse, just about.
I did have an Audible plan briefly, and I bought some books. So I do have some waiting for me whenever I do get around to it. But the thing is, when I got the books, I went and bought a bunch of nonfiction stuff. So there is a movie coming out or being worked on right now for this book. Glenn Close will play Caldwell. Gemma Arterton set to play Helen Justineau, which is an interesting choice because Gemma, I believe.
What would we know her from?
Hold on. She's a British actress. James Bond, Quantum of Solace, but she's white. She's not black, and Helen Justineau was a black character. So I find that interesting that they did that. They went that way.
Interesting.
Patty Considine will be Sergeant Parks. So they don't have who the girl is though.
Melanie.
Yeah, they don't have her, but yeah, but I'm sure it'll be a good movie. It's because Mike Carey did also do the screenplay.
Cool. Well, that'll be one to watch out for sure. Thinking of books becoming movies, I can't wait for The Martian.
Yeah.
I actually heard that that's been moved forward, which is unusual. That it's coming out in October instead of November. I could be wrong on that, but that seems a little unusual. But I still think Matt Damon is going to kill that role in a good way.
I know all the sci-fi people will not be leaving their houses in November.
Maybe that's why they moved it. They're going to move the movie up so people can stay at home in November and play.
October 2nd.
Wow.
They really moved it up. So
I need to read this then.
It's after the successful release of this. Basically, the first trailer was so well received that they're moving it up that much.
And you got it, Michael. You got it on Kindle.
Yeah.
And when so I know if you get the audiobook, the digital version becomes dirt cheap. Does it go the other way too?
No, it's the other way around. If you get the ebook, then the audiobook is dirt cheap.
Oh, okay. I thought it was.
They don't. No. If you get the audiobook, you're out of luck. You still have to buy the ebook. But yeah, I got it on Kindle. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Read it. I'm with
Yeah.
Patrick.
And it's R.C.
totally
Bray.
worth
I
it.
mean, how can you not grab something by him? So
Yes. He was
And it
in
looks-
Yesterday's Gone, so he's got to be good.
and the Beam. So
Oh, really? He was. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're right. Okay.
yeah, he was in the Beam too. So
I didn't listen to the meme.
yeah,
Just
that's one long.
not
audio.
even to the wedding scene. Like,
No, I am looking forward to reading. I'll read it. I probably won't listen to it, but I will read it 'cause I am going to write in that world. So,
cool.
but
And
they
it looks
need
like
to slow down. I mean, they're on
yeah.
their third book now, and I'm not reading all three to get.
And they're dense too, right? There's a lot going on there.
They're pretty big.
Like
Mhm.
Game of Thrones number of characters kind of thing. And it looks like probably next we'll be reading Every Day by David Levithan. I'm gonna
Yeah,
check that
that's a
out.
quick read too. You'll like it.
Cool, awesome. So we're coming up on about 45 minutes now. I think it's time to start thinking about wrapping up. Any final comments before we start to wind down?
Good.
No? Well, thanks a lot for coming, Dave. It's been great having you here.
Thank you for having me.
And do you want to just kind of let people know where's the best place to connect with you, find your stuff, if there's any sort of book in particular right now that you would like them to check out?
Our most recent release is a book called 12. It's a story about a murder spree at a diner that takes place. It starts with the opening is the crime scene, then it jumps back 12 hours and brings you into the lives of 12 people somehow involved in this shooting spree. You don't know who lives, who dies. And Yesterday's Gone will be out. Season 6, the final season, will be out July 7th. You can find me at davidwright.com, collectiveinkwell.com, or sterlingandstone.net.
Okay. And your books these days are available everywhere, right? Like 12 is not just...
Everywhere.
Okay.
No KDP Select at the moment. So,
Awesome. Okay, well, thanks again so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And to our listeners, we'd love to hear from you. You can send us an email at tbrpodcast@gmail.com, and be sure to subscribe on iTunes. And we will talk to you next week.
Bye.
Happy reading, everybody.